Settling is not an option for me. Everything I desire is already mine. What if you can have it all? Because every day is for the girls.
Hello. Welcome back to another episode of For the Girls. I'm your host, Victoria Alario. And today is such a full circle episode. I'll tell you girls why. But we're talking with the lovely Samantha Skelly. She's the founder and CEO of Breathwork. She's a speaker, an author, and a podcaster. But most importantly, Samantha is a dedicated advocate for personal growth and holistic well-being. She has made it her life's mission to rid the world of anxiety so people can thrive using the power of their breath, which is so cool. And why this episode is so full circle, like I said, is because I actually have an entire episode, a podcast episode out already based on a post that Samantha shared on Instagram so long ago. It's the 80th episode of For the Girls, titled It's Time to Overcome Hustle Burnout. So listen to that episode after you listen to this one if you haven't, or even if you have and you just want a refresher because it'll pair so nicely with this episode. It is from April 10th, 2023. So if you're like scrolling through trying to find it, go back a year ago, April 2023. It's time to overcome hustle burnout. And it is funny that it's kind of like, not exactly, but it's only a little bit over a year ago from now. So, like, funny to see that I found this post on Instagram a year ago, made a whole podcast about it, and here we are a year later. I'm actually interviewing Samantha. And also at that time, when I did make that podcast episode, I got on my Instagram stories. I like shared the slides from her post, and then I was like talking to the camera on my story, and I had like a whole breakdown. I'm like crying, like choking up. My eyes are filled with tears, and I was basically talking about her post and how I resonated so hard with her post about like the girl boss movement being toxic and this burnout from like hustle culture. And so I told Samantha in this conversation about that whole story. And so we both got the chills because it was just crazy, like how I resonated with it at that time a year ago. And then her team reached out unknowingly, of course. They didn't know that I like made this post, a year ago. They didn't know that I saw her stuff a year ago. And so when her team reached out, I started reading through like her stuff. I like clicked the page and like, her name looked a little familiar. The page looked a little familiar. So then I went into my For the Girls notes where I like upload all my podcast episode, where I like make the notes for all the podcast episodes. And I searched Samantha Skelly. And that episode from a year ago came up. So I was like, holy shit, this is the girl who like inspired so much of a shift in my life. And it was just so great. So when I told her, it was just truly such like a full circle moment. So it's really cool. I'm excited for you girls to listen, or if you want to watch. I think it's so much more powerful to watch because this will be on YouTube. So if you are listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever, maybe pause. You could stop here and then head over to the YouTube channel. It's just at For the Girls, and you'll be able to actually watch the visual of this episode. I think we connect really well. I think the energy is so aligned. So I don't know. I just think watching is going to be a really different experience for this one in particular, rather than listening, because there is like that spiritual, what do you say? Spirituality behind this one. It's just a deeper episode than just like your standard interview. So I do think watching will have a bigger effect on you. So yeah, anyway, when her team reached out, I'm like, this is a hard yes. I need to have her on the show. So it was a long time coming, and I think it just made for a really beautiful conversation. And so we do talk about that, the hustle burnout. We do talk about making the shift from hustling and working from your masculine energy to then creating much more beautiful work for yourself through your feminine energy, or as Samantha calls it, instead of work, she says your mission. So making a much more beautiful mission through your feminine energy. We discuss healing in all different sorts of ways. And of course, we discuss breath work. And we even do a little breath work session for you girls to do along with us. So like I said, it's powerful, it's deep, and I think you girls will really love, especially that part in particular, doing the breath work with us. So without further ado, let's get right into the episode. Welcome, Samantha, to For the Girls. Introduce yourself to everyone. Tell us all about you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. So, yeah, my name's Samantha. I realized at a very young age that I had a passion for personal development and spiritual development, and from like a very, very, very young age. Like I remember being like 7 years old and journaling every night before bed. Like I just always had this curiosity for the human experience and this curiosity for, what's possible for us. And as my life sort of began to evolve, I was a dancer and I was a child actress and I was a stunt double on Smallville for a couple years. And I realized that so much of being in entertainment created body image issues for me, like body image issues and disordered eating. And, I know as I'm speaking to that, many of your listeners are probably like, me too, because that's so many women deal with that, right? And so I struggled with that for a long time, and it was really interesting because I logically knew, over exercising and fighting with food and all that kind of stuff wasn't what I should be doing to heal myself, but I couldn't not do it. I couldn't stop doing it. So I ended up finding breathwork 15 years ago, and breathwork was the thing that sort of just like changed the trajectory of my life and just brought me into a deeper place of healing. And now that's my whole passion, my whole business, my whole world is breath work and how we can really allow ourselves to come into a place of deep healing through the power of our breath.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know that that's the most important thing that you just said, but I am still stunned by the stunt double. Sorry, I have to go back for a
Let's go
second.
back. Let's go
Yeah,
back. Let's
you're
go back.
like, this is the thing I don't want to talk about. This is the thing I do want to talk about. I'm like, wait, back to the
No,
thing you
we can
don't want to
go
talk
for
about.
whatever. Yeah. We can do
Wait,
it.
because that, like, what do you do? Like backflips and stuff? Like, how do you even do that?
It's anything that the actress can potentially hurt herself. So I think oftentimes when people think stunt work, they do, like you said, like backflip or like jumping out of windows. And like, yeah, there was a little bit of that. Like I remember this one stunt I was doing, it was like 2:00 in the morning. I was cliff jumping at 2:00 in the morning, pitch black into Vancouver waters. So it was freezing. And that was probably one of the more like intense ones, but then it would be something as simple as like balancing on a ladder or jumping into a pool, or it's just like anything that there's a slight chance that the actress might get hurt, right? It's like better her get hurt than me. So I would do that. It could be like, falling off this chair or like rolling or, gosh, it was so many different things. And sometimes it was just like body doubling. Like sometimes it was like, okay, the camera's going to come from behind you and you're just going to be playing with like papers or playing on your phone. And because like our hands would look the same, like they pay me way less than they paid her to do that scene, So it was just like a lot of that. So yes, there was like the bigger things of like the jumping and the whatever, but then there was like small things too.
Yes, I know exactly what you mean because ever since like I've heard about I guess body doubling, I notice it in shows now when it's like the over the shoulder and
Yeah.
it's like I'm watching Friends and like Monica turns her head and I'm like that's not Monica, I'm like that's somebody else. Okay. Wow, that's such a cool gig. I know that it's not like, the end all be all, but that is a cool gig to have just for even like side money or something.
It was funny. I was like in I was coming home from a speaking gig a couple months ago and I jumped in an Uber and I'm talking to the Uber and I'm like, "Hey, what do you do?" Da, da. He's like, "Oh, I'm a film producer." I'm like, "Cool. Like what kind of films do you do?" And he's like, "Well, I'm working on this film right now where I'm like interviewing a bunch of stunt doubles." And I'm like, "That's so random." I'm like, "I used to be a stunt double." And he's like, "For what show?" I was like, "Smallville." He's like, "No way." And so we just got to like talking and then it kind of he's like, "Do you still do it?" And I'm like, "No." But then there was like this part of me that was like, maybe I should. Like, I mean, pause breathwork is, takes up all of my life and all my time and it's amazing. But I'm like, maybe
Yeah.
I should start doing something like that. So anyway,
Yeah.
it just it was a really fun part of my life. I did a ton of stunt doubling, body doubling, small roles. Like I was never like an actress or anything, but I did like the small background roles and or like bigger background roles, I guess. And but my big thing was like dance, and so I did tons of dance, tons of musical theater. But yeah, stunt doubling was definitely a good time.
Wow. And when you said you started to develop body issues, was that from just like looking at yourself on camera and just like not liking what you see, or how did that really develop?
It's a good question. I remember being like young, like 8, 9, 10 years old, and being in the bath and just looking down at my body and just being like, I don't like my body, and I don't know. I think it was just this like feeling of like being uncomfortable. Like I remember like I never liked wearing shorts to school. I would always wear pants to school. I'm like, I hated my legs. And it's crazy because like the height of my body image issues, I was like 20, 21 or something like that. And I was the same size I am now. But through the lens of body dysmorphia, I was like so fat, but I wasn't. I was like what I am now. And so it's just so interesting how, you can view yourself so different than who you are. And, even like some of my girlfriends are like, man, I just like feel like this. Or I'm like, you're so beautiful. Like, what? Like when you look at someone else, you're like, you're so beautiful. But then sometimes the self lens that we have on ourselves is like just a little bit distorted. So yeah, it was just like an interesting time in my life where, I didn't feel like the lens in which I looked at myself wasn't accurate. And that caused a lot of like messing with my food. Like I remember I was living in Australia and I was like, I need to go on a diet. And it was like the first diet I ever went on. I think I was like 18. And the diet that I saw my mom do back then was called the cabbage soup diet. Have you ever heard of the cabbage soup diet?
No, I've heard
Okay,
of a lot of diets, but I've
dude,
never
it's
heard of
like
that one.
it's like old school, It's like our moms did it. So I just remember like being like, I'm gonna do the cabbage soup diet. And so I just freaking ate cabbage soup for like weeks and weeks on end. And I was like, hopefully this will work. And and then from that, it was like, oh, let me try another diet. Let me try another diet. Let me try another diet. And I just like kept effing with my food and just felt so disconnected from myself. And ultimately, I was just disconnected from my body. I was disconnected from my intuition. I was disconnected from my hunger cues, my emotional hunger cue. I just disconnected. So it was a beautiful, period of time when I found breathwork and I got to reconnect to my body. And I'm like, oh, whoa, this is amazing. Like, wow. So anyway.
It was like a seamless transition. Like what, you had that snowball effect of like, the overdoing with the diets and whatnot, the over obsessing really with the diets. And then, one thing leads to another. And then you ultimately find that light at the end of the tunnel. And it's like, oh, like life can get better. Like,
Totally.
wow, I had no idea.
Totally.
That makes perfect sense. And speaking of being unaligned or like disconnected, it is funny that we're actually doing this now because I didn't mention this in the emails. I didn't say this to you or anything because I was like, I'm going to tell you this on the call. So I wanted to tell you, like in an organic, like face to face kind of approach. About 2 years ago, I was feeling disconnected, not through like body or things like that, but through my work. And it like really made me feel kind of just like out of like, it does ultimately like end up affecting you like internally too, because it's like that external thing. And then you just feel so disconnected. And then you're like, what even, like, am I even a person? When you start to spiral, you're like, how did I even get here?
For sure. Yeah.
And it had a lot to do with like energy and all of that. And then you had a post go viral, like an Instagram post, like a slideshow sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I shared every single slide to my story. And this is so long ago, but way before us connecting now. And I had a full blown breakdown. And I'm someone who like never, ever, ever cries on social media. And like, I always got like heebie jeebies when girls would post like crying videos and pictures. I'm like, why are people crying on social media? But when I read this post from start to finish, it was like probably the way you kind of felt when you found breathwork after like having such struggle. Like it was like that, like, oh my God, sort of thing. So I'm like talking through it. I like made stories, like talking about the post and then like about myself, and I'm just like crying on my stories. And I'm like, and then when you got in touch and this, and I'm like, holy shit, this is the girl whose post. And it was amazing. And I do want to read a little bit of that post for people listening.
I'm excited to see what one it is.
I won't read the whole thing because it was like 10 slides, but I do want to give context for the girls listening. So I'm going to just share a little bit of it because like, even with you being a complete stranger, your post was a big pivotal moment in my career shift, because it has been about 2 years now where I was like my career was essentially my identity. And I feel like now I've been able to like just like
Mm.
prioritize living. And like
Mm.
now I have a boyfriend. Like at the time I had no romance in my life. Like I had nothing outside of my
Yeah.
work. And
Yeah.
so I have felt so connected and aligned, realigned essentially since like this time period, and your post being one of those things. So
Babe, this is
I
so good.
had to.
I got
I know.
goosebumps.
I know. I'm like, I don't want to tell her on
Oh
email.
my
I want to
goodness.
tell you now.
Dude, this is so
And it
cool.
is so interesting to see. I like just everything is energy, and like us connecting at this point
Yeah.
eventually was
Yeah.
just like,
100%.
duh, of course that
Yeah,
happened.
of course. Everything is energy. Everything.
All right. So here was what the post said. Again, it might be a little bit long, but I'm breaking it down as
Yeah,
much
let's
as I
go.
can. The girl boss movement is becoming toxic.
Oh, yeah.
There we go. There's a huge difference between women finding their power and creating from the soul, and the girl boss hustle culture that we're becoming drenched in. Women aren't men. Women build and create differently. Lately, the vibe has been to meet and match men, which is not only screwing up the polarity in relationships, but women are burning out and not pursuing their soul's calling. It's time for a new way for women, listening, honoring, and following the innate wisdom that oozes from our bodies. Being intentional about the create and rest dance, that is the key to our expansion. Let our work flow in cycles and seasons, and then let it stop altogether, trusting that even in the stillness, life is being created. The new way is a deepening into surrender, trust, and into our inner knowing. And it's also knowing that some days, work, quote unquote,
Mm.
looks like letting ourselves purge darkness in bed for hours. The new way is knowing the true metrics for success aren't revenue numbers and profit margins, but nervous system regulation and deep fulfillment. It's not a this or that, nor is it a girl boss or a housewife. It's a completely new paradigm, one where women know where their true power originates.
I got goosebumps.
Me too. So that
Mm.
was everything for me exactly when I needed to see it.
Mhm.
Break this down for us. Again, this
Mm.
was like a shortened version, but like I love everything about this. It stands so true. And just, yeah, in your own words, I guess, aside from that, what does all of this really mean in like the black and white terms for girls listening?
Yeah. So I remember exactly where I was when I was writing that post. I was in Idlewild, California, which is this like beautiful, magical, nature inspired little town about 2 hours from where I live in San Diego. And I was in a hammock, and I was lying there in the hammock, and the river was going, and I just remember feeling this deep sense of peace in my body. And simultaneously to that, I was receiving so much inspiration of content and connections, and just like it was as if God was just like speaking to me of like, this is where we need to take pause next. And I just had this realization. I'm like, this is so important. Like our ability to relax and surrender and regulate our nervous system, and receive the guidance, receive the inspiration, receive the knowing, and then allow ourselves for it to like land on our body, and then create it and share it and radiate it into the world, like not from this place of like, I gotta get this shit done, but it's like these points of inspiration allow us to just like keep things in momentum and keep creating. And so I just remember feeling the difference between when I ran my last company. It was called Hungry for Happiness, and we helped women who struggle with emotional eating and body image issues. You can probably guess why I did that. And I loved the mission, but I ran it like a dude. I ran it like I had a penis. I ran it. I was like 9 to 5, let's go, structures and KPIs. And let's like, I was so intense, and I was burning out my nervous system. I was getting resentful. I wasn't paying myself what I knew I deserved. I was paying everyone else more than me. I had really unhealthy relationships with like people pleasing and boundaries and blah, 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 blah. Like it was just a mess. And then when pause came in, I was like, I'm only going to start another business if I get to run it in the way that is so good on my soul. Like I'm not going to burn myself out. I am not going to jack up my nervous system. I'm not going to have unhealthy boundaries. I'm going to hold people accountable. I'm not going to like have this culture where I'm just trying to please my employees. I'm going to have a high standard, you know? And so when I said yes to the call, when pause came in, I also was like, hey, God, universe, I'm only doing this in my way. This is how I do it. This is what's going to feel good. Because if I'm here to like make everyone else happy, then like I got to be happy or else I'm going to get resentful. And so in my life now, I get to feel this duality, this contrast of like what it feels like to run a business in the masculine with force and hustle and push, cutting off our life force, cutting off our energy, cutting off our intuition, and what it feels like to run the like my business in the feminine, where I am prioritizing energy over strategy. I am using my intuition as, you know, one of my greatest marketing strategy. I am honoring the way that I operate in business. And I had this conversation with my clients yesterday where I was like, guys, I'm doing business in my own way. Like, I am not going to be anything for you. You know, like I got some feedback in like, cause we survey our clients, and one of the feedback forms, it was like, Sam swears too much. And I was like, all right, like, I'm not going to change that. That's just me. You know, I'm not swearing for you. I'm not trying to impress you, but I'm a really expressive person. And sometimes I'm like, fuck, you know? And it's like, I'm not going to change that about myself. And so that was one of my agreements when I decided to take on this mission of like, yeah, I'll do it. I have the energy to do it. I have the inspiration to do it. I have the intelligence to do it. But like, I'm not going to self-sacrifice. I'm not going to go against and not be in self-consent with myself. I'm going to show up as 100% myself. And I don't care about being liked. I just care about being respected. I don't care. Like, I cared so much about being liked when I ran my old company. This one, I'm like, I don't care if you like me. I'm just here to do a job. I'm here to change the world. I'm here to impact humanity. And I don't care if you like me. I just want to get you to your goal, you know? And so there's just like a different energy of how I approach it now. And it feels super freeing and super liberating. And like, you know, some people are really down with my vibe. Some people are like, she's too much for me. I don't care. You know, like whatever you want, like choose your own adventure, whatever. Right. So anyway, I'm kind of going on a rant now, but I just remember that moment in time where I'm like, man, too many women are just like operating with like men, or operating, this is how you need to be professional, or this is what you need to do to make money, or you need to work 16 hours a day, or you need to sacrifice relationships, you need to sacrifice your nervous system. It's like, no, you don't. Like, you get to have it all. We just have to use energy more than force, right? It's about tapping into our power, not being forceful. So there you go.
I love all of that. And I deeply, deeply resonate. It's almost like, you know, in the past, your reward for doing what you were doing was maybe like the financial gain, you know, certain success was defined differently, more by like, say, status or finances, as opposed to when you do like that passion project, the reward is that internal fulfillment more than anything. And I don't know about you, but at least for me, like, I certainly, in shifting, you know, my career and just like my energy toward career, I did take a financial cut, but like, I'm okay with that. And I don't know if that's the case for you, but it was for me. And like, it was knowing like, I, you know, don't have to hustle to have success. Like, success can look different. There were times where I made like crazy, crazy money, but at the cost of like working until 1 o'clock in the morning and not going out on the weekends. Like, you know, as opposed to now, I'm like, as long as I'm good, which I am, like financially and whatnot, like, I'm not going to overexert myself, because that's not the reward at this point. The reward is like my mental health, my sanity, feeling good. And that's not the case for everybody. Some people can make the same amount of money either way. But for me, it was like, you just see a shift in what the desired result is, like what you actually want to get out of this. And I think everything you said just resonates. And with that being said, I'm curious, like, if you have any tangibles that would help girls in the sense of how can they continue to, like, how I just said, like, I did take a financial cut, but I made a major shift. Like, how can girls still, you know, build wealth, make money, but also find fulfillment? Is it like, you know, because I think for some people it might not be that like easy of a transition. It's like, well, I have to do this to make this money. So do you have any sort of tangible way that women can do
I got
both?
lots of tangible things. You ready to go? Should we go tangible? Should we go
punch me with them? Hit me with them.
All right. So one of I'm gonna teach my framework of business, and this is what I fundamentally shifted when I went from working in Hungry for Happiness as a man in my masculine to pause. this is how I view business now, which has helped me so much financially, emotionally, spiritually, et cetera, et cetera. Number one, business is a spiritual assignment. It's a spiritual assignment. It's not about what happens. It's about who you become in order to deal with that problem, right? Business at the end of the day is a black hole of never-ending problems. That it just is what it is. And we have to not look at it like, oh no, everything's falling apart. It's like, oh, how is this here to grow me? How is this here to evolve me? We have to do that at the beginning. Like we got to, right? I wake up every single day, Victoria, and pause meets my needs on such a high level in such a beautiful way, right? It meets my need for contribution. It meets my need for significance. It meets my need for love. It meets my need for connection. It meets my need for, variety and like joy. Like it meets my needs in abundance every day. And it also pokes on every single one of my insecurities every single day. Right? It's like, I don't have to go far to like feel like shit if I decide to, right? Because it's like, I'm the face of the brand. There's a lot of like energy going towards me. If I like say the wrong thing, like people are annoyed. And it's like, I cannot give in to that. And when I do get triggered and things do come up, I can't make it about the thing. It's what is this bringing up in me for me to look at? That's all this is. And if we don't really get with this, entrepreneurship is going to be impossible. And I've seen so many entrepreneurs go down because they personalize and internalize when your revenue drops, right? Or when you have a reel that doesn't do well, or when, when someone on Reddit is like, Sam sucks, she's the worst. Like it happens, It's like they say, my fiance is like, just stop, just don't Google yourself. Like just don't read. And I'm like, I still want to, right?
It's an addiction. It's hard. It's hard to not.
So anyways, it's like, that's number one is business is a spiritual assignment. It is poking at your insecurities. It is unearthing and excavating them for you to heal them. That's it. And when you approach it like that, then you can actually solve problems from a clear mind and an open heart. So when things happen in the business, I'm not like, oh, this is me and I fail. It's like, oh, this is what's happening. What do I get to do now? And I'm coming regulated. I'm coming clear, right? Like whatever it is, whether it's like a financial thing or whether it's a team thing. I mean, I was on a podcast yesterday and I was like, I just don't have team stuff. Like my team is so awesome. Like every single person on the Pause Breathwork team is so amazing. They're so here for the mission. Like knock on wood, but I feel so grateful that like my team never gives me any stress. They're just amazing. And they just give me joy, honestly, on a daily basis. But there's like other things that happen, like with vendors or like, just other crap that happens, whatever. Like, again, our clients are also amazing, but, we have thousands of clients. There's going to be a couple in there that aren't amazing, right? It's like, okay, how can I not look at it as like, oh, this is so bad, but look at it as like, okay, how can I just solve this? So that's the first thing. Business is a spiritual assignment. Number two, business is art. It's your art. We are creating art every single day. Me and you being on this podcast, this is a form of artistry. We're using our voices. We're using our love. We're using our inspiration. We're using our energy to collaborate and create something that's going to be digestible for other people. This is art, right? Every single photo that I put on Instagram, every single reel, every single piece of, you just read that post. That was my artistry. A video that I do, a podcast, me being on stage, it's all art. And when we view it as that, as like, this is an expression of my essence, an expression of what wants to come to me and through me, it becomes so enjoyable. Like one of my favorite things to do is wake up at 4 a.m, put my fire on, put my candles on, put the music on, and just grab my laptop and just start writing and writing and writing and writing and writing and writing and writing. And that's just, it's just so fun to do that because it's like, I don't know how that writing is going to land. And it's so cool. Like I got goosebumps when you were sharing that story because I'm like, that post was just an expression of my heart. It was my art. And I'm like, there you go. And it had such a profound impact on you. I couldn't have guessed that, right? But my only job is to show up and create. The third thing is my dad said to me when I was 12 years old, when you focus on service, you never have to worry about money. And that's been revolutionary in my life. Like all I need to do is focus on service, on impact, on changing people's lives. And I never have to worry about money. And that's ran true. It's impact first. And then the last one is abundance, right? Dollars and cents. Obviously, that's how businesses run. So we have to be mindful of that. But I also approach this from the lens of what's your money story and what's your relationship to money. And I teach this in my mastermind. I teach it with my clients. I talk about it all the time because it's so important. As a business owner, I have millions and millions of dollars coming to me and leave and like circulating, right? All the time. So I got to have a really clean relationship with money or else it's going to get all kinked, and it's going to feel weird and I'm going to feel weird receiving it. I'm going to feel weird when I pay people and I don't want that energy. I want this. I want to trust money. I want money to trust me. It's like I am responsible with money. Like open up my, level of abundance, allow me to receive even more so I can do even more good in the world. And that's been my kind of philosophy on, kind of like a framework. So that's like one basically like tool. The second thing is energy over strategy. So this yellow looking chair in the back of my office, that's where my work's done. My work's not done in front of a computer or writing emails. Like energy is the most important thing. There's so much science out now that thoughts literally become things. Like we don't have to believe in it. It's science backed, right? So when I'm visualizing my business or visualizing my goals or whatever it is, I'm doing it there. Like I'm really working on my energy every single day. Strategy is secondary to energy. If you have amazing energy and an amazing strategy, you're going to freaking crush it. If you have amazing strategy, your energy sucks, you're never going to make it work. It's like mindset and energy is so important. And I teach my students this all the time of like really getting that. So now you ask, okay, cool. That makes sense. Energy over strategy. But how do I do that? Like, what are some of the things? So obviously it's going to be no surprise to you that breathwork is my thing, right? Like I'm obsessed with it. I built a whole mission on breathwork. Breathwork is the quickest and fastest way that we can get out of our own way, shift the imposter syndrome, shift the fear, shift the doubt, and get ourselves back into a place of alignment. It's the quickest way to do it. And so that's why I built the Pause Breathwork app for those of you listening who want to check that out. And it just allows us to like get into a state of abundance, get into a state of power, get into a state of alignment. And I work just like there's things that I do every single day where I'm like, if I just focus on this, everything else will work out. So that's one of those things. Like when I really just focus on my energy every single day and I do my 20 minutes of breath work and I focus on my relationship with money and I just get myself into a state, it's a domino effect. It just works out, right? Same thing with my health. I know every single day I need 140 grams of protein. Okay, just focus on that one domino. Once you hit that, everything else is going to like work itself out. Right? So there's like these key dominoes in various areas of our lives where I'm like, I just need to do that. Right. If I do that, then it's all like an example with Eric and I, right? It's like we have two non-negotiable things that we do every single week. Is Thursday nights we do date night. Sunday nights we do our coffee date. Our coffee date is where we kind of like talk about our relationship and like talk about opportunities for growth and appreciations and sex. I know when we do that, it makes everything else easier. So it's really about like finding that domino in your life where if you do that, the other stuff doesn't actually matter.
Wow. Okay. The amount of questions, like you managed to make my brain have like a bullet list of questions, like so many different things that I'm like, wait, I have so many things that I want to say on top of that. So first of all, I love what you just said there at the end, especially about, like having those things. That's something that I talk about with my clients because I do coaching. And I often tell them like having, first of all, those non-negotiables, like there were so many keywords you said that was just like me, like I say the same thing. I'm like, oh my God, yes, I love that. We're so aligned. And non-negotiables, like there are those things that I say, like these non-negotiable things, like if they just become a habit, just part of your routine, it no longer feels like work. It no longer feels like something you have to do. It's just what you do. It's just like brushing your teeth in the morning. That's always the example I give. It's like the same exact thing. So having those non-negotiable things and making sure that they're true to you, because there's plenty of people who like put the non-negotiables on their to-do list because it's, again, something they feel like they have to do, but then they're not consistent with it because they just feel like they have to do it, not like they want to do it. So that was one thing.
One thing just on the habit thing, James Clear has a book called Atomic Habits, and he talks about this concept of habit stacking. So it's like, find the thing that you already do. You already brush your teeth in the morning, right?
Attach that.
Yeah. And I'm
Yep.
like, that's so genius. It's so simple, but it's so genius. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah, it's like attach the new habit to the pre-existing daily habit, and then now you have a routine that you get to follow. That's completely something that I talk about with my clients. The other thing was like, on that note, saying it doesn't feel like work or it doesn't feel like you have to do. I'm just curious because you say mission a lot rather than saying the work. You're like, my teammates are, they're tied to the mission, or when I'm sitting over there, I'm doing the mission. Is there like an intentionality, I'm assuming, but behind why you choose like certain words to say mission rather than to say work?
100%. Words
Sorry,
are
that's like such a sidebar question,
no,
but I'm like, I have to ask because you
dude,
keep saying it.
it's such a good question. Words are energy, right? And energy creates reality. And so what reality do we want to live in? Like work is work. Like, it's work.
It's like such a masculine word.
Yeah, it's like, I gotta go to work. I think of like, I always like send love when I'm like driving past and I see these men with hard hats and they're freaking digging holes and they're sweating. And I'm like, that's work. Okay. That's work. What I have the privilege of doing is not work. It's a mission. Like, I'm on a mission, it's like I'm here and we're having this amazing conversation. And my hope and my desire, my intention is that these words reach the ears of people around the world who it sparks something in them. And they're like, oh, wow, I want to start coaching with Victoria. I want to download the Pause Breathwork app. Like, I want to change my life. Like, this isn't work. This is fun. Right. So that's a big one. Yeah. Like, I've removed the I have to's from my life, and it's like I get to, like I get to do the laundry. I get to go pick up my family from the airport. I get to have a call with my family tonight at 7:30 to support them with something. I get to make Eric dinner tonight. I get to, right? It changes the way it feels like a privilege. It's these little tiny things. Right. So I'm so mindful of the words that I use every single day, because if we look at, let's get geeky for a second, but spelling, right? What's the root word of that? Spell. So you're putting a spell into the world through the words that you use. So yeah, we just gotta be so mindful. So like, I never say I can't. I never say I have to. I never say anything's too expensive, ever. That's relative. Okay.
That is something that I have told girls. I've said it on like TikTok and whatever, to pay attention to when they're going on dates with guys, like how he talks about money and certain things. Like if he calls things expensive, oh my God. I swear, everything that you're saying, I'm like, these are the same things I feel, because first of all, like you said, it's all relative. And second of all, it just goes to show their outlook on life in general. Like all of these words, it's like you said, words and thoughts, they become things. And so you speak it into existence. If you're going to call all these things expensive, it's like, life just becomes so stressful because then everything is so expensive in your mind, and like who can pay for certain things. That was, I always said like that would be like an ick for me if guys would call things expensive. I'm like, oh, can't do it.
I was at the dentist the other day and I was like getting this like checkup, and I needed to like get some dental work done. And, she's like, well, maybe we can like break this up because, this is like, it's really expensive to do this. And I just look at her, I'm like, expensive for who? You or me? It's not expensive for me. So like, let's just get all this shit done now.
Let's actually just do the whole thing. Let's add extras in there.
Yeah, like, give me some veneers while you're in there. I don't know. Put a diamond in my tooth. Fuck it.
That is so funny. I love that. And it makes so much sense. Like how there are people who have different results in life based on things like that. Like it makes so much sense when like, girls play the comparison game and they see maybe someone like you or myself and they see success and they're like, how does she get to have that or whatever? It's because it's from the brain to the mouth. Like it's the whole thing. And so I think that, the way that we like project, our thoughts, our feelings and all that makes so much sense.
I mean,
how people
really
find success.
It's like I can look at people's life and I could tell them exactly the conversation that's going on in their head based on their results.
Yeah, it's so.
Do you know what I mean?
True.
It's like It's it's just so black and white. And I notice it in myself too. Like, so the first 90 days, January, February, March of this year were so hard, like so intense. Like I felt like I was in a pressure cooker. It was intense. We were going through growing pains with the business. I was just like, and I had to be so meticulous with the thoughts that were going on in my mind and like switch them immediately. Right. Like the thought was like, oh, you bit off more than you could chew. I'm like, no, I didn't. I can do this. Like, I had to be so meticulous. And then also like if we talk about another tool, it's like when life gets overwhelming and intense and you feel like you're in a pressure cooker, that's when you need to double down on self-care. Cause that's the time where most people are like, I can't do self-care. I don't have time to go to yoga or breath work or go for a walk or like do the thing. That's when you need to like double down on those practices. Cause that's what really helps you get through. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's a perfect segue right there because I want you to elaborate even more on what breath work really is and just like even what pause breath work is, like how what
Mm.
you actually do through the app, through the mission. I was going to say through the work, through the mission. Just explain more for someone who
Yeah.
maybe is completely foreign to this concept.
Yeah. Breathwork is a self-healing modality that helps us regulate our nervous system and feel peace, calm, and energized. It removes our hypervigilance, anxiety, stress, overwhelm. It gets rid of that energy. We can do some on the show if you want to after I explain it, just so we can give people a
Ooh,
little taster. It
yeah.
removes that in a very quick and effective way so we can get back to feeling our most powerful self. So that's basically what it is. Pause breathwork is a methodology that I created in 2017 that incorporates the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects. So how can we really support the physical body, the emotional body, the spiritual body, and the mental body, and it helps us to just align everything, right? If our bodies are like nice and strong but our like mental, emotional, and spiritual is not, then we're going to have a lack of energy. And my whole mission with pause is like activating people's aliveness. Like, how can we make the world just feel more alive? Because when we're alive, we're energized, we're like on mission. It's just great. So that's basically like what breathwork does. Yeah, do you want to do some? We can do a little.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
so down. Let's do
Okay.
it.
All right. So if you're driving, don't do this because it can cause a little bit of dizziness. Just
If you're driving, don't
disclaimer.
do this because you have to close your eyes.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So everyone just closing your eyes, drop your shoulders, allow your mind to drop into your heart, and just notice when our mind drops into our heart, notice what might shift for you. And to begin with, just take that left hand, place your left hand on your belly. And we're just going to breathe in and out using just the mouth. We're just puffing the belly out and bringing it back. So it sounds like this. And as you breathe, keep that breath going. Because we don't normally breathe this low into our belly, it might feel a little tight, might feel a little strained, but just keep ballooning that belly out and bringing it back. Now just relax your belly and just notice how you feel in the moment. Taking your right hand, placing your right hand on your chest, and same thing, isolating the chest using just the mouth. So in through the mouth and out through the mouth. Now we're going to bring that all together. So we're going to go into the belly, up into the chest, out through the mouth. So it's 2 breaths in and 1 breath out. When you're ready, let's begin together. Keep letting the breath do the work. Just one more minute. Taking a deep breath in through the nose. Holding the breath at the top, squeezing the arms, squeezing the abs, squeezing the legs, shooting the energy up through the top of the head. Releasing the breath, letting the breath go. Coming back into the body. And just being present here for a moment, feeling what you feel, noticing what you notice. And now, when you're ready, slowly coming back to the space. There we go. That was just a little taster.
You were not kidding about the dizziness.
Yeah, it gets in there.
Even before we started the breathing, when you said put your head into your heart, I swear to God, my head was like, I'm like, you didn't even start. And I already like felt like a wooing. And then yes, the breathing was you're a good breather. I'm like, I can't breathe that hard.
So that's the thing with breath work. It's like choose your own adventure, right? If it was
Yeah.
too fast for you, you can slow it down,
Mhm.
right? Yeah. You're a good breather.
Wow. Yeah, I'm
You're
like,
a
wow, she's
good
good at
breather.
breathing.
Wow. That's like you're good at living. I like the way your heart beats. Your heart.
No, that was wow,
So
okay. Okay, that
yeah,
was
it gets in there. So that was like 3 minutes essentially, less than.
yeah.
My first breathwork session was 3 hours. So it was that for 3 hours. So dude, I
Holy
was like, it
cow.
was wild. It was so good. It was so good. It was so good. So, but here's the thing, start small. For those of you who are listening who want to check out the app, just search pause breathwork in the App Store, Android Store, or wherever you get apps. There's a free 14-day trial. Start with like the 3-minute ones. Just try it
Yeah.
out, see how it feels. And then you can kind of move up from there.
Wow. No, that was good. That's
Right?
crazy that like, for me, I'm like, wow, that was a lot. Like I feel dizzy or whatever. And it was only 3 minutes as opposed to like if you're like all in, you're
Yeah,
doing
yeah,
hours
yeah,
worth of that.
yeah.
Now, how does that, because you mentioned like intuition and all that, how does doing that help, improve your intuition and gain
Great
more
question.
clarity?
Great question. So, can you think of a time where you were super stressed out? You were in your head, you were full of anxiety. It's like, why do we get into that state?
Yeah.
Because we're disconnected from our body. Intuition doesn't live in the mind, but being in the mind is a survival strategy, right? If we feel unsafe, which most people do, whether it's like in business, like, oh my God, am I going to make money? Am I going to
Right.
be able to, like when we get into that state, we shut the energy off in our body, we go up to our mind. We can't feel our intuition there. So what breath does, and you probably felt this a little bit, is it drops us back into our body. When we're dropped back into our body, then we can feel our intuition.
Interesting.
It's
So
wild.
that's like how from the beginning, how you said like drop your head into your heart, essentially.
Yeah, that's just a reference point, right? So most people, they just their view, like the power of where we view life from shifts reality. So if I'm like, hey Victoria, view it from your mind. the world's going to look more rigid. It's going to feel more intense. It's going to feel chaotic. It's going to feel black and white because the mind thinks in black and white. But if I'm like, okay, view the world from your heart, there's like a softness. There's a relaxation. The edges are softer. There's not so much black and white. There's like room for lots of different variations, right? So it's a different quality.
That makes sense.
Right? So it's a good reference before we start of like really getting into the body, getting into the heart.
And how would you compare the results of this and the benefits of this to the results and benefits of meditating?
So breathwork is a form of meditation. It's just an active form of meditation. The results are similar if someone's a seasoned meditator. But for me, I'm very hyperactive. I've got ADHD. My brain's always going. So me going and sitting in meditation, the whole time I'm just thinking about not thinking and I'm annoyed. Whereas with breath, it helps us relax by clearing the mind. And then from there, we can meditate. But I never meditate before breath work. I always say breath work is for you if you can't meditate.
I actually, without even really trying, there were a few times that I like listened to a meditation and I like fully like almost as like falling asleep. What do you call it? Like theta state, something.
Theta state, yeah.
Fully fell into that. And I'm like, damn, I'm good at meditating. Like I wasn't even trying. And
That's
I'm like
so good.
sleeping but awake. It's like it's like the weirdest feeling. I don't even know how to explain it. But you know, I could see why someone who's never done breath work or meditation in general think of it as like, this is so woo woo, like, you know, this doesn't work or whatever. But like, I think if you really give yourself to it and just really do it, like it, even for someone who is totally a non-believer, like it does, like you actually really see the difference. And, you know, this is someone who, for me, that was the first time ever even really hearing of these things. But I'm like, well, I got nothing to lose. I'll try it.
Right.
And it's like, holy shit.
I know,
Like,
it's wild.
It is.
Wild. Yeah.
So now you said you never meditate before, right? Before breathwork, or was it the other way around? What did you just say?
I'll never just go into a meditation. I'll always do breathwork before meditation.
Then meditation.
Even if it's 3 minutes, even if it's what we just did today, right?
Right.
It helps drop the mind,
right.
Clear the mind. Yeah.
Right. And then aside from that, do you have any other, are there any other practices or habits that you do for whether it's healing trauma or like anxiety, anything else that you pair along with breath work and meditation?
So the 3 ways to move energy is through breath, movement, and sound. So breath work paired with somatic movement, shaking, punching pillows, like getting into the body. Like my fiance hates me right now, but I moved all the furniture in our master bedroom and I turned it into a dance studio. He's like, Sam, is this going to stay like this? I'm like, for now. Yeah. He's like, doesn't work for me. I'm like, it really works for me and my emotions though. So like, I'll just go up there and I'll blast music and I'll just like shake and move. I'm a dancer, obviously. So I'll dance and move and shake and like that moves energy. And then sound as well. Like I got a text this morning and it just like really pissed me off. And I'm like, fuck. And I just went like, and I just screamed in the mirror and I'm like, oh, okay, I feel better. Right? Like think of animals, right? Like animals, they get shocked and then they shake it out and then they're totally fine. Humans don't do that. We're emotionally constipated. We just store everything in our bodies and it just like makes us feel crappy.
Now, as far as sound, it's only sound you make. It's not like listen to certain
I mean, that too, like sound healing is like really amazing, right? But if we're like in a very charged, activated place, like I don't like it's not going to be super helpful just to like lie down and listen to some sound bowls. That's relaxing. But when I'm talking about sounding is I'm like using your voice to like make sound, especially with like women who like we should be seen and not heard and all that like, you know, suppressed trauma that we have stuck in our bodies. Like this, like letting ourselves hear ourselves scream and talk and move and sound like it's really healthy for us, you know?
Yeah. And just another thing, because you mentioned moving, that came to me. Would this also include tapping? Like EFT, I think it is tapping?
Yeah, definitely. Tapping is a really, really powerful modality to like regulate the nervous system. But again, like I don't do tapping when I'm in like a super activated space. I'll like, if I'm super activated and in charge, I'll do breath, I'll meditate, I'll move and sound, and then I'll do tapping if I do it. I'm not a big tapper, but it is a powerful modality.
Yeah. I think what I love most about all of this, how you said the movement, sound, wait, I lost it. The three was movement, sound, and breath. Okay, duh, obviously. Movement, sound, and breath. I think what I love most about this in particular is that it's all healing from within as opposed to
Yeah,
outside voices and
absolutely.
external resources. What advice or what do you say for the girls who are like reading all the books and listening to all the podcasts? They're doing like all this personal
Mm,
development, which I learned, a few years ago, that I think like an information overload is just not good for anybody. I used to be like, you got to read every self-help book, and like that was totally
mhm,
my
mhm.
way. But now, I feel like
Yeah.
I'm so detached from that. So what do you feel like, what do you say to people who are like, I'm reading all the things, I'm doing all the resources, but like I'm not healing?
That was me, dude. If I could hook up my arm to an IV of personal development, I would.
Oh my
You
god,
know?
it's like junkie, like personal development
Dude,
junkie.
seriously, seriously, and it gets like that too. So I have just a phrase that says consumption without integration creates frustration. So I got to this place where I was like consuming so much, like every podcast, every book, everything, but I wasn't actually integrating the lesson. So I just was full of knowledge, but I still felt like shit. So for me, 15 years into this, it's your body is, if you don't address the body and you don't get into the body and you don't clear energy in the body, you're going to stay stuck, and no amount of information is going to move the needle. Right?
Yeah.
You got to get into the body. The body holds the truth. They're like, we got to clear the trauma. We got to clear it out. We got to move it through.
Even things like journaling, writing it
Oh,
down.
dude,
Like
100%.
I feel
Journaling is so
like
powerful.
Yeah, I feel like I cannot stress it enough. And it almost sounds like, so like, oh yeah, like I don't know, cliche, whatever. But like cliches become cliches because they're true. Like if
Yeah, exactly.
people aren't just saying journal for fun. Like there's a reason where that really came from. And I mean, like I feel like some of the best like progress I've ever made in life, whether it was personally, professionally, internally, externally, mentally, like really came from putting pen to paper and just
Oh,
journaling.
it's so good. It's so good. There's a book called The Artist Way by Julia Cameron, and she talks about this tool called morning pages, and it's basically like a stream of consciousness where you're just like it doesn't even matter what you're writing, but it just like you're dumping out all of this energy
Hmm.
in your body on paper, and it's just, and you never go back and read it. It's just like the process of doing it, and it's just so good. I love it so much. So yeah,
Yeah.
journaling's amazing, breath is amazing, movement is amazing. Like I like what you said, cliches are cliches for a reason. Gratitude, that's the biggest one. I was like, be grateful, but it's so
Yeah, it's
scientifically
true.
proven.
Yeah, it's like this is what it is for a reason.
Yeah, like Eric and I are constantly just paying attention to like what we're grateful for every single day. It's like I'll just be like, what are three things you're grateful for? And he'll say it to me, and I just like drops me in the moment. I'm like, like I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful to be here with you, Victoria. Like this is so amazing. Like I'm so grateful for my personal training session this morning. I'm so grateful that, you know, the connection I have with my mom, and just like boom, three things. And then it's just like it shifts your energy and you move on, because you can just miss out on life.
Hmm.
Like our lives are so full and they're so busy and they're so like everyone's feeling like it's just so much, right? That if we don't pause, no pun intended, and just take time to just be present and just like observe our life, it can fly us by.
Yeah, I think gratitude is
Mm.
like everything. I always talk about that. I also love what you just said about when you were saying like the brain dumping, like just like in the journal. And it's like not something that you're necessarily going to go back and reflect on. I had a journal where I was doing that. This was, so I was living in Miami at this time. So this was like 2021. And I would like go sit by the water and just like brain dump in this
Mm.
journal and like everything I was going through. And I put it all out there, and it was just recently, a few weeks ago, that I was like, for some reason, like that journal, like always came up for me, like almost like in an unsettling way, because I know how far removed I am from the way I felt at that time. And I was like, I'm going to get rid of it. And I just did. I just got rid of the journal the other day. It's been sitting in like my nightstand for 3 years now. And I like felt so good about
That's
getting rid of
awesome.
it, because it's like, you have it, you know what's in there, whatever, but then like, you don't have to always be that version of you. You don't always have to hold on to that. Like, I think even the process of getting rid of it was healing in itself. Like,
Right.
doing nothing other than just putting it in the garbage, like, was healing. So I'm like, I've known I've had this in my nightstand next
So,
to my bed.
wow.
The
Wow.
energy of it,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
next to me every
Mhm.
single night when I go to
Mhm.
sleep and wake up in the morning. I like thought about it a lot. I'd be like looking for a hair scrunchie and come past the journal, and I'm just like, I think, like, imagine somebody saw this, because I don't even want to see this, let alone somebody else seeing this. And I just finally was like, I'm fucking getting rid of it.
Yeah.
And
See
I
you.
felt so good
See
about
you.
it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, that does wrap up just about everything, other than if there's anything that you feel that we missed. Is there anything that you want to share with the girls,
Mm.
even just a bit of advice that's on your heart that you just want to share before we go?
First of all, you're an amazing host.
Oh,
Like,
thank you.
you're incredible. You
Thank
really,
you.
really are. It's just like so natural and so fun.
Thank you.
The biggest thing is one of the things I'm like really coaching and teaching people on right now is how to activate our aliveness. It's
Mhm.
like when we realize that we have this life force energy that is running through our bodies every single day, and we can activate it through our awareness, through gratitude, through breath, through journaling, through all these things, through movement, it's like we become unstoppable, right? It's like let joy be your job. How can I allow myself to be the most joyful version of me possible? And don't do things because they're productive or they're going to make money or you should do them. Just do it for the sake of doing it. Like last night, one of my best friends and I, we went down to the beach and we just took hula hoops and we just were watching the sunset hula hooping. And I'm like, this is not productive at all, but it is absolutely essential for my joy. And, it's like the more joyful we are, the more everything just works. And so prioritizing your energy, prioritizing your joy, and really realizing that you have the ability to activate your aliveness every single day through the choices that we make. So I'll leave you guys with that.
Wow, amazing. Where could everybody connect with you and find you
Mm.
online?
I'd say Instagram would probably be the best place. So definitely come say hi, send me a DM, let me know you found me on this podcast. For those of you who desire to be breathwork facilitators or want to download the app, everything's at pausebreathwork.com. You can check it out over there.
Thank you so much. This conversation was amazing.
Yeah, thanks for having me, babe.